Madam Speaker, to ask the Honourable Minister of Tourism whether, in regard to the fall in tourist arrivals by air by 8.7% in March and 4.5% in the first quarter of this year compared to the same period last year, contrasting with the growth performance of other Indian Ocean islands, which are the main competitors of Mauritius, he will state if he has met with the Mauritius Tourism Promotion Authority to discuss same.
Madam Speaker, as the House is aware, Statistics Mauritius is the authority responsible for compiling and publishing official statistics for the country, including the tourism sector. Statistics on tourism are compiled as per the United Nations World Tourism Organization's definition, which reads as follows, and I quote, "A tourist is defined as a non-resident staying overnight, but less than a year, and who has no employer-employee relationship with a resident," end of quote. As such, Madam Speaker, it is not proper to disaggregate tourist arrivals by air and sea, and the figures given by the Honourable Leader of the Opposition in his PNQ do not convey a true picture and are misleading. Madam Speaker, in real terms, tourist arrivals for March 2019 registered a decrease of 4.5% over the same period in 2018 and not 8.7%. Similarly, tourist arrivals for the first quarter of 2019 declined by 1.2%, representing 2,800 tourists, and not by 4.5%. The correct figures for tourist arrivals for the last 3 months are as follows, as per Statistics Mauritius. 1. Total tourist arrivals for January 2019 increased by 1.1% in spite of adverse climatic conditions. 2. Tourist arrivals for February 2019 were at par with February 2018. This is mainly explained by the decrease in tourist arrivals from China and India due to the reduction in airlift capacity by 6,500 seats, resulting in a drop of 5.6%. And 3, total tourist arrivals in March 2019 dropped by 4.5%, mainly because the Easter holidays this year are in April. The figures as at 22nd April 2019, Madam Speaker, indicate an increase in passenger arrivals of 3.5%. Madam Speaker, I must emphasize that air connectivity is critical to tourism growth, being given that Mauritius is a long-haul island destination, with 99% of the total tourists arriving by air. We have no territorial border that a tourist can simply cross to reach Mauritius. With regard to the part of the question that refers to our competitors in the Indian Ocean, namely the Seychelles, Maldives, and Sri Lanka, I am informed that unlike Mauritius, they have adopted an open skies policy. What a liberal aviation policy implies is that airlines have complete flexibility to respond to market demands and opportunities. Passengers benefit from the widest possible travel and flight options at very competitive rates. Madam Speaker, as compared to our direct competitors, Mauritius has underperformed due to a reduction in airlift capacity during period January to March 2019 as follows. With regard to China, 24 flights equivalent to a decrease of 7,200 seats. India, 17 flights amounting to a shortfall of 5,100 seats. The UK, 13 flights representing a drop of 4,200 seats. Madam Speaker, tourism is a sector which is subjected to the vagaries of geopolitics, trade wars, terrorist attacks, internal tensions in France and the UK. The House is aware that on Sunday last, during the Easter celebrations, Sri Lanka was the target of multiple and coordinated bomb blasts. As at present, 290 persons have died and more than 500 injured. I have written to my colleague, the Minister of Tourism, to convey my sympathy and our condolences. I hope, Madam Speaker, that tourism in Sri Lanka will be resilient. It is premature to predict the growth scenario of the sector on the basis of the performance of the first quarter of the year, because forward bookings for the coming 3 months indicate a positive growth of 3%. Moreover, according to Statistics Mauritius, the sector is expected to grow by 3.6% to reach 1,450,000 tourists, which is well above the growth rate of 3% required to reach 2 million tourists by 2030. Madam Speaker, since I assumed office as Minister of Tourism in 2017, I have regular meetings with all the senior officers of the NTPA to review progress on market performance and to brainstorm on strategies to address new challenges. Not later than yesterday, I had a meeting with MTPA and we discussed on the marketing actions that should be envisaged in the present context to reverse the declining trend. Over and above this, Madam Speaker, I meet the Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of LARIM on a monthly basis to review the situation in the tourism sector and to discuss on measures to sustain the growth of the sector. With a view to developing a more realistic and pragmatic approach to the Chinese market, a high-level workshop with the participation of the MTPA, including its public relations representative based in China, top management of Air Mauritius and captains of the hotel and hospitality sectors, was held under the chair of Mr. Arnaud Martin, who is a board member of the MTPA and a consultant to Air Mauritius. This was done to brainstorm on the challenges and devise a coherent strategy to continue to tap the Chinese market. We have already taken several measures to stimulate the Indian market. Madam Speaker, I wish to highlight that apart from Chinese and the Indian markets, where we have airlift constraints, Germany, France, and all our new markets, namely the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Benelux countries, Commonwealth of United States countries, Nordic countries, and Africa are performing remarkably well. For instance, Saudi Arabia registered an increase of 109% during the period January to March 2019 over the corresponding period last year.
Madam Speaker, the ostrich buries its head in the sand when it is in danger. The tourism industry is in the greatest crisis for the last 10 years, Madam Speaker. There's a huge difference between arrivals by sea, staying one day, one night on a cruise ship, and arrivals by air, 11 days in the villas and hotels. Madam Speaker, I'm going to table an official document from Statistics Mauritius, which has been prepared at my request and which shows exactly how deep the crisis is in Mauritius. I would like to ask the Honourable Minister whether Statistics Mauritius has kindly sent him a copy of this document, which has been produced by one officer and has been sent officially.
Madam Speaker, I have not received that document from Statistics Mauritius, but let me say that when we say that the Statistics Mauritius compiles the figures for tourist arrivals on the basis of those coming by air and also by cruise ships, this is not something that we have invented. This is something which has been going on even when the Honourable Leader of the Opposition was Minister. So we have to be consistent in the way that we address these figures given by Statistics Mauritius. So this is why I said right at the beginning of my answer that it is not right to disaggregate arrivals by air and by ship. It is true that those arriving on a cruise ship spend one day in Mauritius, but those who do not come down are not counted as tourists. It is only those who come down and go through immigration procedures in Mauritius, they are counted as tourists.
Madam, I don't want to get into semantics with the Honourable Minister. It was not an issue before because thanks to us now, cruise tourism has increased tremendously. I'm going to talk about facts as produced by Statistics Mauritius, and I'm going to give a copy to the Assembly, Madam Speaker, because I'm shocked that the Minister has not taken the trouble for his management purposes to find out that Germany is not a happy market, prospering market as he has suggested, but that Germany has in fact fallen by 10%. That UK, as we know, has fallen by 10%. Switzerland, 20%. India, 5%. Australia, 20%. China is always on about 32%. Madam Speaker, Malaysia, Singapore, all 10 and 20%. There's a dramatic crisis in the tourism industry.
Yes, Honourable
and
Leader
I'm
of
pleading,
Opposition,
yes.
so that is the question. You're asking the Honourable Minister to say why. Ask your question, but don't make a short speech, please.
I have an issue because he's pretending not to understand. This is my issue.
No, you can't make a short speech, but you can, please, both of you, please resume your seat. You know perfectly well, I told you the other day, that you're biting into your own time when you're making a speech. And making a speech at question time is not allowed. Please.
My question is this. Given the dramatic crisis that most of our markets are under, and it seems to be unaware of this, because it doesn't want to see what is the real plan of the Ministry of Tourism to reverse this most dramatic crisis in our tourism industry. It's a serious question.
Madam Speaker, I don't want to play politics with an industry which is so important for the country. But I want to dispel one doubt or one perception which the PMSD wants to create, that unless the PMSD is running the tourism industry, everything collapses. Let me correct the Honourable Leader of the Opposition with figures which I also have from Statistics Mauritius. With regard to Germany, we have between January to March 2018, January-March 2019, a positive growth of 7%. This is also Statistics Mauritius. So this is not... and for France is 3.4%. Well, and this, of course, there are some markets that have not performed. But generally, it is not true to say, like some newspaper has said, c'est en chute libre. I have said in my reply, Madam Speaker, that for the same period, January to March 2018, January to March 2019, the number of tourists has dropped by 2,800, out of a total expected of 1.4 million. So we have to be realistic also. We are not the only ones in the world having to deal with this kind of situation. And this is not the first time when the Honourable Minister, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition was the Minister of Tourism in 2008, 2009. For him, it's chikungunya. For him, it's chikungunya. For him, it's something else. Chikungunya, that is a very sort of very perfect reason, excuse. So for you, you have excuses. Chikungunya. Okay. I will answer what I have to answer. I'm not here to take, I don't take replies from cues from others. But I'm just saying, Madam Speaker, that tourism is vulnerable. It is an industry that is subject to all sorts of things happening in the world. And we are an island state, and we have to take account of everything that's going on. So it's not only chikungunya, there are other things also happening in the world.
Okay.
Speaker, I am shocked at the ostrich attitude. I am really shocked, sincerely shocked, at the ostrich-like attitude of the Honourable Minister of Tourism, Madam Speaker. But let me take another angle. The UK, dramatic fall in Mauritius, even with the croisière. But in the Seychelles, it is up 42%. Sri Lanka up 6%, Maldives up 14%. So what is the reason?
I've just said in my reply that it is the air access policy adopted by those countries. Whether we go to Dubai, Seychelles, Sri Lanka, Singapore, they have an open skies policy. And they say anybody can come in, not only for point-to-point access, but even beyond that point. This is the model that they have adopted. And the Maldives adopted that because they had a national carrier in the past. And that carrier collapsed in the year 2000. Then they decided to say, okay, from now on, we are going to have an open skies policy. And very soon after Maldives had adopted that policy, Sri Lanka also decided to emulate the open skies to promote tourism. I'm just saying that there are reasons why this is so. I'm not saying who is right, who is wrong, but the objective reason, Madam Speaker, is that an open skies policy was decided on by these countries in order to promote tourism, and in fact they have been successful in that.
Madam Speaker, tourism represents 131,000 jobs in Mauritius, 131,000 jobs in Mauritius, direct and indirect, 24% of GDP. Why is he being so nasty to the Prime Minister, who is in charge of air access, to tell him that he's a fool and he doesn't understand that he ought to deal better with tourism?
Madam Speaker, I will reply like what the Chief Justice said to a lawyer who had made a complaint against it. I will not stoop that low to reply to this.
I didn't hear what he said, Madam Speaker.
I
will go forward again. Now, Madam Speaker, I will look forward. Because this is more... Madam Speaker, forward bookings are negative for the next 2 months, and I have figures, official figures from LARIM to prove it. At least tell us what you're going to do to reverse these forward bookings, these negative forward bookings, apart from blaming the Prime Minister for his inability to get you planes.
Madam Speaker, my information is that the forward bookings are not that catastrophic as the Honourable Leader of the Opposition is trying to make us believe. Well, I have figures from LARIM. They tend to indicate a rise in the tourism bookings. But, Madam Speaker, let me also say that when we look at the tourism industry, we have been diversifying. And in fact, Saudi Arabia, the Arab countries, represent a huge market for us. Recently, we had the President of Kenya to Mauritius. And during the talks that we were having with him, he suggested the idea of combining Mauritius and the beach and the national parks in Kenya. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition is saying that this has been going for 20 years, but he was the Minister of Tourism for more than 10 years, and he did nothing. Now we have a commitment. We have a commitment from the President of the Seychelles to try to do something to twin the destination Mauritius beach and also the national parks in Kenya. And now we have direct, we have almost daily flights to Nairobi. So it is possible to open up not only Kenya, but also East Africa for the tourism market.
Madam Speaker, I'm going to table an official document from LARIM showing 10%, 10-point fall, and the Prime Minister should know this, 10-point fall for April, and a 2-point fall for May. I will give you that. So there's no 10, you see 10 là-bas. This is actually the truth as it stands. So we are on to 5 months of negative. Madam Speaker, this is what the President of LARIM said 2 months ago. He said, la destination Maurice n'est plus qu'elle était. Maurice brillait dans le passé, elle l'est moins aujourd'hui. This is what the President of LARIM said. So I'm asking the Honourable Minister, what is he going to do to try at least to stoke up the fire so that Maurice brille un petit peu?
Well, we are already doing lots of things with regard to creating a favorable environment for the destination in Mauritius. We have taken lots of measures to increase the activities. And in fact, when I was in Saudi Arabia recently in Riyadh, we are trying to increase the range of activities because we need to give more opportunities, more experiences to the tourists. And this is in fact what we are doing. But we have also to face the reality, Madam Speaker, that we are a small country. We do not have the Eiffel Tower. We do not have Buckingham Palace. We have those constraints. And I also go as far as to say, we don't even have a Bob Marley. Maybe we should have a Bob Marley singing in English. And these are things that attract people because we are an island destination without a long history, and we do not have those iconic sculptures or institutions that can attract tourists. So we have to do with what we have. And this is what we are doing. I'm not saying I have myself been a firm proponent of having huge shopping malls. I have suggested to the Mauritius Duty-Free Paradise that we should have a shop in Portway with all the brands which the Chinese tourists love to purchase when they are on holiday. So we are looking at things that the tourists would want. So this is why we have surveys to find out what are the things that the tourists would like to do when they are in Mauritius, because we want them to come to Mauritius and we want them to spend their money here. And this is what we're doing.
Speaker, you will agree that the biggest constraint for the tourism industry is the minister himself, who is known as Minister 2%. Madam Speaker, I'd like to ask the Minister, given that the weather is changing, it's raining all the time, many times, and he partly answered the question, are we planning to have museums? Are we planning to increase nightlife? Are we planning to increase indoor entertainment? Are we planning to review the way the hotels are constructed? Are we planning all this?
Madam Speaker, we are, in fact, we are not reinventing the wheel. We have already addressed these issues in our internal meetings. But let me say also, Madam Speaker, that we need to upgrade the historical sites. My colleague, the Minister of Arts and Culture, is addressing that issue. We have already started work on the Citadel. We want the Citadel to become a place that can be open all the year round for entertainment, for shows, for food court or whatever. We are going to do something big with Citadel because it is something that we can really use. But we are also looking at events. I'm happy that when the theatre of Portway will be completed and the Plaza Theatre will be complete, together with the Kudan Center, we'll be able to organize events to attract people from India, from Africa. We are doing all this, but we need to have the infrastructure first. For years, the theatre of Portway was in a derelict situation. It is only now that we are upgrading it, and I hope very soon we'll be able to use it as one of the, maybe the oldest theatres in the Indian Ocean for people to come and to see spectacles and shows.
Okay. It's all at the end of the mandate, unfortunately. Let me ask you, in fact, Madam Speaker, ask the Minister concerning security. Now, my deepest sympathy to the Sri Lankan nation, the Sri Lankan people, Madam Speaker. The security is an issue even in Mauritius. When I was Minister of Tourism, I had spoken to the Commissioner of Police so that GIPM commandos could be stationed all around near to the tourist areas. Can I ask the Honourable Minister quite seriously whether this is still the case? Does he know?
Madam Speaker, let me say that when it comes to security, this is not a matter that should be debated in the House. I think the Honourable Prime Minister is fully aware of the requirements of security, and we are very alive to ensuring that Mauritius remains a safe and secure destination. One of the greatest selling assets for Mauritius is its safety and security and the friendliness of the people. We are not going to take any decision that is going to jeopardize that image of Mauritius.
Speaker, moving on to this famous air corridor. Now that we have the figures for the first quarter, even with the famous quasi-risk, we are, in Malaysia, 25% lower than previous year. For Singapore, 11%. Singapore, 11%, and Asia generally, I think 15%. So would you agree that air corridor has been a disaster and probably a heavy weight for Air Mauritius to carry, and part of the reason why it is in such dire situation?
Well, I don't have a brief for Air Mauritius, Madam Speaker. I think the Air Mauritius can speak for itself. But let me say that Air Mauritius is the only carrier flying to certain destinations, including Singapore, Malaysia, India, China, and Australia. And I understand that from what I have read in the papers, there is a study that has been commissioned by Air Mauritius. So we have to await the outcome of that study to see what was the impact of the air corridor on the situation of Air Mauritius. So I'm not in a position to properly and effectively reply to that question.
I think you're in any position at all, if I may say so, Madam Speaker. Now, I'd like to ask the Honourable Minister, given this terrible crisis in the tourism industry, whether there are strong rumors that the minister is not on speaking terms with the chairman of the MTPA, Mr. Bujari.
First of all, let me reject categorically that the tourism industry is in crisis. I reject that categorically, and I maintain that the tourism and hospitality sector is in a healthy condition. Of course, there are ups and downs, but let us wait for the end of the year. It is too rush to judgment today for what is going to happen in December. Last year as well, some papers were talking a lot about this. There's a drop of tourism. We don't know what is going to happen. So I said, let's wait. And this is not the first time this is happening, Madam Speaker. It is a current feature of the tourism industry in Mauritius that in the final months we pick up for whatever shortfall there has been. But with regard to the other issues which the Honourable Leader of the Opposition has raised, I don't think that it really deserves any reply.
Okay, fair enough. Now I'll ask the Honourable Minister. We talked about chairman of MTPA, but we don't see any movement on the Ilvani, which was responsible when I was there with Robert, Di Robert and Saint-Ange for the upsurge in the cruise market. And we don't hear anything about Ilvani anymore. I ask you whether you're still committed to the Ilvani and you're putting your effort and your money into this organization? Or is it now, as I understand, confidentially from other people, that Mauritius is no longer interested in Ilvani?
Well, I attended the Vanilla Islands Organization meeting in Seychelles in January this year. So how can the Honourable Leader of the Opposition say that we are not committed to the Vanilla Islands? In fact, the truth is, Madam Speaker, that when that organization was launched, there were lots of expectations that were raised. And one of the expectations was that it was possible for people to travel by air within the islands, or the Vanilla Islands, for a minimum amount of money. But when the airlines look at their economics and the costs of operations, this has not been possible. But where the Vanilla Islands has been successful is in cruises. And I recognize that the cruises are an important segment on which we can build on the Vanilla Islands. What is going to happen in the future, I do not know, but I've just been informed that last week in Miami there was a sea trade exhibition, and the MTPA sponsored the Vanilla Islands to go to the sea trade exhibition.
Whose, in fact, is not you, but the Vanilla Islands, Madam Speaker, and me before. I'd like to ask the Honourable Minister about the strategic plan, which cost quite a lot of money. And I understand there was a standing committee. About 9 months ago, the plan was produced. And it's only met once, in March, the steering committee. And we're coming to the elections. So is the strategic plan now pour la poubelle?
No, nothing is thrown to the poubelle when it comes to the strategic plan. But, Madam Speaker, we have to look at the tourism industry in a holistic manner. It is very easy in March, in April, to say that there will be a chute libre. But let me say, on the 1st of June this year, we'll be having a gala event of the World Travel Awards. We will be having a lot of conferences also in Mauritius. So the image of Mauritius for the MICE market is improving. So apart from the regular tourists who come to the hotels, we are also looking at other sectors of the tourism sector to increase the number of tourist arrivals and also the MICE market. And we have several conferences happening. We have one which was announced by the Honourable Prime Minister with the UNODC happening in the month of September with about 200 delegates. We have other conferences happening. So we want to diversify the tourism portfolio so that Mauritius benefits in the long run from this sector. With regard to the strategic plan, I think I'm informed that the steering committee meets quarterly.
Steering committee, I meant your committee that you meet, not the underlying steering committees. That has only met once under you for the last 9 months. Madam Speaker, I'd like to ask on that same breath, the Minister and the MTPA, even this morning, spent all their time criticizing poor Air Mauritius, which falls under the PMO, and which apparently never talks to you, which is what you said at the radio. What are you going to do to improve relations with your main strategic partner, who doesn't talk to you, you don't talk to them, and you criticize their boss?
Madam Speaker, I have said a number of things about Air Mauritius because I wanted to have better consultations. And in fact, I must say that things are moving in the right direction. And on Friday, Friday afternoon, we are having a meeting with the top brass of Air Mauritius to look at this strategy. So it is not, you see, the newspapers and the radios tend to magnify whatever happens, but in reality, we have been talking.
Last question, last.
Madam Speaker, I'm receiving so many messages from hoteliers who are actually laughing at the replies of the Prime Minister, who has absolutely ridiculed himself. I'd like to ask the Honourable Minister, what is he going to do now that he has absolutely ridiculed himself in front of the whole hotel industry in pretending not to understand the difference between air, tourism, and quasi-risks who stay on the ship?
Madam Speaker, I will not dignify the Honourable Leader of the Opposition with a reply.
Time is over.